Okay, so I'm sitting here, it's December the 16th, 2024, and during the month of December each year, I spend some time working through my AR, whatever it is, which I try to do actively every week anyway, but I really try to wipe it out, especially in December. And then I go through and I'll look at things like, my upcoming routes, for what I have built in my routes for the upcoming season, and in this case, the snow season. And then I'll go through and review any transactions, etc., that might need to be cleared up. And a couple of things I've noticed through some of the companies, the services that I use. I made a video briefly about this one with JP Chase about a year and a half ago, where I had a client that was consistently paying me via Zelle. And when a payment comes through via Zelle, I receive a text and or an email stating, hey, a payment has been initiated, and then it will be credited to my account. Now, I learned that it can take up to 8, maybe as many as 10 days. That might be wrong there, but definitely as many as 8 days before the monies appear in my account, which is interesting because 8 days down the road, if it appears in my account after or on the 8th day, the ledger shows that it was credited to my account back when I got the email, which wasn't the case. And where I'm going at with this is I accidentally clicked a details on one of the payments when I was logged into JP Chase's page on a Zelle payment, and it showed a negative $35 or $65, whatever it was for the client charge. And I thought that was odd. So I checked on the next one after that from that client, and the same thing. And what had happened is about 10 of their payments over the course of 2 months had been pulled back. In other words, they went through, everything went through, I got paid, but somehow they got pulled back through and out of it, which JP Chase tells me I can't do that. If I pay someone from Zelle, I can never get my money back. So I don't understand how this happened. But what made it even more interesting is I never received an email, a call, a notice when I log in, nothing that the monies had been pulled out of my account. It didn't even appear on the ledger. It was just in this one section where I looked in Zelle activity. So it was very odd. So something recently happened through Quickbooks. I use Quickbooks for all my accounting records for my business. And I had a client that we did a leaf removal for, and it was like $405. So I went into his account, as I always do. I processed his payment with his credit card. His account shows 0 when I logged up his name. I pull an AR, it shows it's paid. But several days later, I noticed that the monies had not been deposited into my business account. So I talked with my live bookkeeping representative through the messenger, and they said, well, yeah, that's a Chase issue. You'll need to contact Chase. No, that's not a Chase issue. I can't just say, hey, a payment's supposed to be in my account. Why isn't it there? They're not going to know. This is an issue with QuickBooks. And the thing that aggravates me is it shows in his account that the payment was made. There is no balance that's owed. It's 0, so his account is current. There is no notification any way, shape, or form to me that the money is in limbo. Okay, so and it doesn't appear on the AR. What it amounts to is on the payment under when you process a credit card, there's a process card or process payment, whatever box now that has to be checked, which is the same credit card we've always used for him, which I haven't had to do at all in the past. All of a sudden, I had to do. And had I not been looking for that payment, then it would have been an issue at the end of the month where the numbers would have come up and they would have said, you're off by this much money, what's going on? And I might not have been able to figure it out, or I probably would have, but here's the bigger problem. What if this baloney happens in June or July when we are off the chart busy, mowing sun up to sundown, sometimes 6 days a week? Where's the time that I have to call and correct them on that issue? So what I would encourage you to do as much as you can, obviously always monitor your AR, especially the big payments. Make sure that the big payments are being applied correctly. And if QuickBooks, if you're paying LiveKeeping for matching your deposits, for matching your payments, make sure they know what they're doing. In my case, I have a customer, every time we mow their lawn, they get a standalone invoice with a due date, which is usually that day, but no later than 7 days after the date of service, which means if we have not received that payment by 7 days after the statement due date is, or the invoice due date, they're assessed a late fee. Not on the account as a whole, but although it applies to the account as a whole, but to that specific invoice. So that way, 3 weeks down the road, when they go to pay, if they try to pay for that week's lawn mowing and they never paid for this one, it applies to the first outstanding invoice, okay? And I've had cases over time where they have matched the wrong payments from the wrong customers to the wrong accounts, or to, more importantly, to the wrong invoices. And this is why this is important. There have been cases in times where I have done everything right in accordance with the contract that I've had with a customer, but they refused to pay because they said that I didn't do X, Y, or Z, even though I have it lined up. Okay, so that invoice hasn't been paid, and let's say sometimes it takes 3 weeks, for that to be worked out. So the week after, we do work for them, and we send them the invoice, and they send a payment on that invoice, but they don't send a payment specifically on the original invoice. That's why that's set up like that, because they're trying to get out of paying it, which is putting me on the hook. Now, ultimately, I don't want clients like that, and I'll weed them out when I see that they do that. But I want to eliminate that kind of stuff from the word go. And the best way you do that really is getting payments at time of service. And I say credit card, but the reality is they can go back and dispute a credit card even if you did nothing wrong. It's harder for them to dispute a check. It's harder for them to dispute Zelle, although, as I mentioned a minute ago, somehow that might be able to be done. And it's even harder for them to dispute cash. You can't. You're paid, and that's really the way it should be. I want to be paid when I do the work and be done with it, because the reality is the farther that we get from the date of service, the less emotionally attached a client feels to the invoice and the service that you gave them. That's just a fact. I worked collections many years ago, and in as little as 6 months from the date of service, if you haven't received a payment, there's a 50% probability you're not going to receive anything at all on it. So you got to strike when the iron is hot. So make sure, especially if you're on QuickBooks, that you're monitoring your AR, that you're monitoring the transactions, specifically the credits or the ACH deposits that are happening to your account, or the payments that are coming from the vendor if you're using their credit card or whatever, that the monies are all getting in there. Because the reality is systems can fail and people can make mistakes. And even if part of the system is automated that you're paying for, there's still part of it that's somewhat influenced by a person on their end, and their mistakes could end up costing you if you don't know what to look for.